Thursday edition of College Sports Now. Kyle Schassburger and David Kahn, the second of two podcasts, as this is the new normal following March Madness. College baseball taking center stage again. At Kyle Schass, at SportsCon4 is where you can follow him. As you can see, we have a special guest, as we like to do on Thursdays. Last week it was Joe Healy. This week it's the voice of the Vanderbilt Commodores, Andrew Allegretta. Follow him on Twitter at Allegretta. He'll have one of those fascinating series coming up this weekend when we preview the lineup card. It's Vanderbilt visiting Tennessee, fourth-ranked Commodores leading the SEC 13-2 in the league. We'll react to all the games this weekend, also some of those field of 64 projections from D1 Baseball after our conversation with Andrew Allegretta. Andrew, I want to start here. I'm going to start differently from our dry run just a few minutes ago, because I learned in a span of 4 days, Mr. David Kahn wore not only a clip-on bow tie, but realized he wore his shorts backwards and rode it out at the gym, all in the matter of 4 days. Have you ever worn a clip-on tie in your adult years? And have you ever worn your shorts backwards and said, what the hell, I'm going to ride it out?
So, I think if he was like you and I, Kyle, and I say this respectfully, with child, I would give a lot of grace for slip-ups like this. Without child, I'm a little bit more concerned.
It's all he has to worry about and concern himself with is wearing his clothes on properly. I mean, come on.
Well, listen, so the bow tie was at the bequest of my buddy who I was in New Orleans for this past weekend, who was getting married. He requested that, if possible, all the guys wear purple bow ties. I don't own a bow tie, so I went looking for one. And I found one that was actually the real thing where you got to tie it and put it together. And I asked the man, I was like, can you show me how to tie a bow tie? I've never worn one before. And he said, I don't know how to tie one. And so I said, okay, well, this is a problem here because I don't either. And his advice was go on YouTube and figure it out. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. The wedding's in 3 days. I'm going to mess this up. I'm going to have to untie it. I'm going to get it wrong. Do you have any clip-ons? And he happened to have a clip-on of the same one, so I just wore it. And unless I told you, you would have had no idea that it was a clip-on bow tie. The gym shorts issue was a bit more of a snafu on my end. I will admit to that. I messed up, and I realized it probably 3 exercises in. I texted you and then happened to look over and see you were at the gym, so I could have just shown you in person. But, yeah, it was one of those days. Just things didn't go right, and it's okay. We all have them, right, Andrew?
For what it's worth, it was not the bow tie that concerned me. It's a perfectly acceptable story.
See, I'm actually more concerned by the bow tie because this is a single man going to a wedding. Like, he's got a chance to rise to the occasion and maybe meet the future Mrs. Kahn, and he's going to do so, breaking the ice with a clip-on tie. I mean, come on.
Nobody noticed.
You got to find a way, man. You can be impressing the ladies.
Yeah, but I impressed them anyways
right.
with wearing the bow tie. That's what I'm saying. It was, and you just put it out into the etherverse that it was a clip-on. I just went with the lie of omission. I didn't even display that it was a clip-on bow tie. I just said, look at me. I'm wearing a bow tie this weekend. I'm, being this fancier version of myself.
For what it's worth, and not to go too New Orleanian on this whole conversation, where David is navigating in that city, he didn't need the tie. He didn't need the bow tie. I mean, we're hitting up the corner. We're going to Bruno's.
Yep.
We're going to the Boot.
Not anymore.
Boat. The bow tie not necessary there. We're not going like Brennan's downtown Bourbon Street where the bow tie was necessary.
He's correct. Yeah, I was on Andrew. I was on Chapatula Street at Race and Religious for the wedding. So
that's right. Spelled with a T.
Yes.
Shall we get
right.
to the meat and potatoes? Yes. Let's go ahead and do it. Kahn, I'm going to let you lead things off, but let me set the table. Vanderbilt ranked 4th nationally according to D1Baseball.com, 29-8, 13-2. So South Carolina this past weekend, taking 2 out of 3, heading to Lindsey Nelson Stadium this weekend for what should be a very charged-up Tennessee team, awaiting the Commodores coming into town to Lindsey Nelson Stadium after dropping another SEC series. They're now 5-12 in the league. So, Kahn, I'll let you start things off in terms of the preseason expectations of where we are today.
Yeah, well, you just talked about where Vanderbilt is today, so I kind of want to compare preseason expectations to reality for a moment, Andrew, because Vanderbilt was projected 6th overall in the SEC at the start of the year, 3rd in their division. Well, you go 9 weekends in, they haven't lost in the SEC yet. They're outshining LSU, number 1 in the nation, number 3 Florida, number 6 South Carolina. At the start of the season, was the vibe around Tim Corbin and the Vandy boys that maybe they were getting a bit underestimated, or has this result maybe even surprised the people inside the clubhouse?
So I'm going to push back a little bit on the idea that we've outshone LSU or Florida, because I think as far as the conversation goes, the talent level at LSU gets a bulk of the conversation. Whether it's Paul Skeens, Tommy White, Dylan Cruz, whether it's what Jack Caglione is doing at Florida. Brandon Sproat has been fantastic as one of their pitchers so far. Even the conversation at times around Tennessee about Chase Dolander being the 2nd or 3rd overall draft pick, the talent level conversation, I feel like is being had outside of Nashville, across the SEC. I don't know necessarily how we fit into preseason expectations. I get what the numbers are saying. I feel like we're still very much learning about ourselves. Not to spend a lot of time around Tim Corbin and then sound like Tim Corbin, but we're halfway through this season, and I think we've played some incredibly challenging opponents both in non-conference with UCLA and Texas and Oklahoma State. Even Maryland, a very good team up in Minnesota, which that is the weirdest place I've ever called a baseball game. But we've got some really difficult tests coming up as well. I think this South Carolina series this past weekend was a good signifier for us. But then to step back into the ring at Tennessee, regardless of what their record is this weekend, we're going to have to build on that. And then Florida still waits for us, and Arkansas still waits for us. So I don't necessarily know. I know that a bulk of our players got really hot together collectively, and that made life appear easy for us. But I'm curious what's going to happen when half of them are hot and half of them aren't, and what happens when we don't get perfect starting pitching and our bullpen continues to get eroded a little bit. So I don't know. I kind of dodged your question, and I respect the fact that I dodged it. But I feel like we still have so much to figure out about ourselves.
Speaking of starting pitching, Devin Futrell has really emerged as the most consistent force because he's healthy, right? Like, we have questions about Carter Holden. I don't know what kind of feel you have for him after he missed the start and came back and didn't even last a full inning this past weekend. But talk to me a little bit about Futrell, how important this emergence has been for him, and some of the starter issues that you're going to have moving forward and how you fill in those gaps. I know Patrick Riley has been huge in stepping up most recently.
Yeah, Grayson Carter and Patrick Riley were gigantic on Saturday versus South Carolina. We can get back into that. Look, you and I and all three of us have worked college baseball long enough. I think you understand that if you've got a third starter that's really good, you totally change the dynamic of your team. If you've got a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday guy that you can absolutely trust, you save your bullpen, you change the dynamic of your team. We struggled, Vanderbilt did a season ago, picking up significant Sunday victories or Game 3 victories. I can think about the trip down to Auburn. We lost Friday, won Saturday, had a chance to bounce back on Sunday, and just got popped by Joseph Gonzalez, who's now their ace, but he was throwing on Sunday last year. We struggled with that at times. I don't know that it's going to continue, but I think as David alluded to, we've not lost a weekend set yet. We're 9 for 9. And part of that, if not a large chunk of that, is because of Devin Futrell. I don't have it right in front of me in terms of like the number of Sunday games or Game 3s that we've won, but Devin Futrell has a 2.35 ERA, and he's 6-1. He doesn't throw a ton of strikeouts. He's got 40 with 12 walks, but he had this unbelievable stretch through like Georgia and Missouri, and I think parts of Mississippi States. So you're talking like 3 SEC opponents where he had, I believe it was 16 or 17 consecutive scoreless, and he walked one guy. One. And our defense is pretty good for the most part. So he's been able to use his defense. He's been able to use his stuff. I mean, his fastball's 89 to 90. He's got a wicked changeup that sits. You know, what's interesting about his changeup is you talk about change of velocity from fastball to changeup. It's not that huge. I mean, he goes from like 89-90 to 80-81. You're not talking like a 15-20 mile per hour dip. It's just, for whatever reason, everything about Devin Futrell, as Coach Corbin calls it, is low visibility. It's just really tricky. for the hitters to pick up on. And then the other thing about him that he's elevated from last year is he's got a pretty good breaking ball now. He's got a slider that he can mix in that's changed the dynamic of the way that Scott Brown, our pitching coach, can call his games. So he's been really, really big for us. As far as Carter, as far as Hunter goes, I've not seen the weekend rotation as we record this at 10 in the morning on Thursday. I would suspect at least one, if not both of them go, but I don't know.
Well, you mentioned Devin Futrell and how massive he's been on Sundays, and I went through the schedule while you were eloquently describing how important he's been. Vanderbilt is 8 for 9 on Sundays so far this season. They've won 8 Sunday games.
It's pretty good.
So that's a great tip of the cap right there.
The Loyola Marymount game is the one that we lost.
Correct. Yes. The Loyola Marymount game is the only one that you guys have fallen in so far this year. So that there goes to prove your point about how important a Sunday starter has been, especially when you've seen across the SEC and across the country the likes of LSU struggle on Sunday. Drew Beam has turned into Tennessee's best starter, so they've had to shift him around potentially. You've seen Arkansas really struggle to figure out their pitching rotation, and you can really go kind of up and down the board across the conference and see the woes, and that's why a team like Wake Forest in the ACC has been so lethal on the weekend because they have 3 bona fide starters, and you can argue that Vanderbilt, with everybody healthy, does as well. But kind of staying in the same vein with something that pitchers have had to adjust to, like you were talking about moments ago, the action clock has been a pretty pivotal shift in college baseball this year, arguably the most pivotal. How have you seen this team adjust to the increased pace of play, and also how have you adjusted as a play-by-play guy?
First off, it's been a non-issue for us. I think in part for 2 reasons. One, because Coach Corbin really embraces it. He likes it, so he leans into it. I think the other thing is, I guess it was last season that we went to those wristbands, whatever you want to call it. So the guys just look down at their wrist, they get the pitch, and they throw. Coach Brown, Coach Corbin, they preach pace. So our pitching staff has not had to deal with that really in any regard. And if you start taking steps off the mound and you're lethargic and your body language shows it, that's not a great sign for how long you're going to stay in a game at Vanderbilt. So, not an issue for our pitchers. I will say, the place that Coach Corbin and I have had the most conversations about it have been the hitters, because I think it's easier for hitters to get sped up. You think about having 10 seconds to get set. So, you're rushing to begin with. And then opponents are leveraging your own pace and the pitch clock against you. So they start throwing really fast, and then it's easy to get a fastball in the top part of the zone past a hitter. So what Coach Corbin and Coach Baxter have reminded their hitters is you have 10 seconds. That's a lot longer than you think. If you need to be set at the 12-second mark, be set at the 12-second mark. That's fine. If it's 11, that's fine. Don't let the illusion of a pitch clock, which seems to be focused on pitchers, impact the way that you hit. And there's also the fact, too, as you guys know, after foul balls or dead ball situations, that pitch clock does not reset until the umpire says so. So after a foul ball situation, if you need the moment offensively to force the umpire to drag you back into the batter's box, take it. Again, our team is very, very pro pitch clock, action clock, whatever you want to call it. But I would actually say the bigger impact for us has been getting our hitters to be paced.
And I'm sure you don't mind it as a solo play-by-play broadcaster primarily on the Vanderbilt Sports Network for all of these baseball games. If you haven't already, download the Varsity Network app. You can listen to Andrew all season long if you want to check in on any one of these games, including this weekend at Lindsey Nelson Stadium, Vanderbilt, and Tennessee. So you don't mind the sped-up pace of play. But take me back. You made a comment earlier about the Cambria College Classic and you calling a game on a football field. I bet you had never thought or envisioned in your life as you had embarked on trying to pursue the dream, and ultimately you've realized it in many forms. So good on you, my man, in your second year, full season at Vanderbilt, calling football and baseball on the radio. You never envisioned having to call a baseball game on a football field where you're describing the action by incorporating the yard markers, I'm guessing. That never had crossed your mind. You never had any prep for that.
No. In fact, probably as you guys can attest, being comfortable with calling games like on a folding card table from like down the third base line or perhaps left field at like a little league park that now doubles for some sort of collegiate summer ball, right? Like that's more in our wheelhouse than US Bank Stadium, up on the fourth floor, basically peering down at a baseball game. I did incorporate yard markers for the fun of it, I guess. I don't know. It was very surreal to watch that unfold. There was a lot about that was really trippy for me. We had to go over the ground rules. Like all of a sudden, ground rules that you thought were pretty normal, you're double checking. So the one that I remember specifically was the outfield fence in right field, which obviously wasn't a fence. They had pushed the seats back to open up space that obviously come forward for a football game. They pushed those seats back, and they hung a gigantic black curtain down from the seats. And in the middle of it was this yellow line. So I didn't know if the yellow line was the home run indicator, or perhaps they just needed the tape to, like, connect the two curtains. It turns out that the middle line was for junior colleges, and the top line was for Division I colleges. So there was all of those little nuances, like the foul poles. That was netting. That was just like behind the backstop netting that they outlined in yellow and hung down from the ceiling. It was strange in all of my ways of possibly articulating what it was like to call a baseball game. The one plus is where many, and this is so inside baseball and broadcasting these days, but where they have placed the football press box is, like a lot of places, kind of in the corner. Well, guess what? What's in the corner? It was home plate. So I was right behind home plate. That was the one plus here.
Silver lining.
Yeah, silver lining, for sure. And we threw a no-hitter in front of 8 people, so that was good, too.
Well, and you normally, when you're at bowl games, Andrew, the football press box, like you said, at some of these other stadiums, these pro stadiums, like you said, is in the corner, and you have to call it off of monitors. That's interesting. It actually benefited you for the baseball game because of where home plate was positioned.
Yeah, it totally did. I still like going to Globe Life and doing the college baseball showdown better. How's that?
Yeah, I totally agree. You're playing at an actual baseball stadium. It would make sense. They have the press box, behind home plate, and you're not calling it in front of 8 people.
Tim Corbin, 870 career wins, tied Skip Bertman for the third most as an SEC coach last weekend. What attribute or characteristic, Andrew, of Corb's, his demeanor, his personality, is it that college baseball fans might be surprised to hear? Because he's the kind of guy that portrays himself as being so calm, cool, collected, very calculated, not real emotional or overly personable, at least on camera. And I think that speaks to the program and the standard that he has built in Music City. But what's something maybe people would be staggered to hear about who Tim Corbin is?
Interesting. Well, away from the baseball field, he's a big UFC fan.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
Okay. And
now we're talking.
And I've not talked with him about this, but I've heard the stories. I guess when Khalil Green was playing for Clemson and Coach Corbin was an assistant, like he and Khalil would hang out and watch WWE. So,
okay.
I think there's something about the intensity of competition and the consistency of those fighters that Coach Corbin gravitates to. He's really intelligent about grass and lawn care because he had to be while he was at Presbyterian. But I think anything that sort of gravitates toward achievement at the highest level and consistency within that achievement, he's going to gravitate to. I can tell you the podcast that he listened to during COVID
I think I read
Finding Mastery was his podcast during COVID.
Yeah.
So I've gone back to that and listened to a few things. I believe is it Michael Gervais is his name, very close with Pete Carroll. So
I believe that's right.
Yeah, there's a few nuances in there. He's definitely very stoic during games, but don't let that fool you. He's a very passionate and intense guy.
I kind of feel like if Tim Corbin were to have a wrestler name, he would be the Silent Assassin.
Good work.
Seems to be perfectly acceptable.
Yeah. He's got a flair. He's got a flair for the dramatic. I like stoic. That's a great adjective there, Andrew. But maybe again, he's an all business type guy, and really leans into the competitive nature of thing, and that allows him to maybe escape what is the competitive nature of raw athleticism of raw sport for something that is more scripted, but still provides the most intense competitive juices. That's really interesting that he likes UFC.
And we're going to see the exact opposite of that this weekend in the other dugout when they go to Lindsey Nelson Stadium, and you've got the fiery show-it-all Tony Vitello and the Tennessee Volunteers in the opposing dugout. So that's another just interesting nuance that we're going to put together this weekend. Let's go a little more individual here on the Vandy boys, Andrew. Enrique Bradfield. Everybody's wondering at the beginning of the year, what's wrong with Enrique Bradfield? Because he's getting thrown out on the base paths. And last year, the story was he didn't get thrown out. He was 46 for 46. He was 93 for his first 99 stolen bases. And I think UCLA got him a couple of times in the opening series. He got gunned down a couple of times when Vandy went to Globe Life Field. So, in reality, nothing's wrong with Enrique Bradfield, but he's had to adjust a little bit because it seems like maybe teams are approaching him a little bit differently in terms of when he's on the base paths. How have you seen him adjust to that this year?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I've not asked him specifically if he feels like teams are approaching him differently. I would suggest a couple of things with Enrique to start off the season. First off, he was chasing a Vanderbilt stolen base record. He knew it. Everybody knew it.
Yeah.
And I think when you get into one of those situations, take your pick. You can go right up to Aaron Judge last year. You get in those situations and it becomes tricky to execute with the same level of consistency and simplicity that you always do. The other thing is, and I don't know how much Enrique took this to heart, but one of the things that Enrique was told last summer when he was playing for the U.S. Collegiate Baseball team, coached by Mike Bianco, was Bianco goes, look, don't worry about being perfect. You can steal 60 bases in a season. Go be 60 of 64 rather than 45 for 45. That's an extra 15 stolen bases. And for what it's worth, there is general respect between Coach Corbin, our coaching staff, and the Ole Miss coaching staff. So I don't really think that was, like your rival trying to throw you off the scent type of stuff. I think there's genuine respect there. So perhaps those two things came together for Enrique. And then the other part of it with him is all 3 seasons he's been a slow starter. They would tell you that Enrique didn't become Enrique back in 2021 until about mid-April when Vanderbilt went to Tennessee. He had that 4 stolen base game, and all of a sudden Enrique is Enrique. That's April, not February. So Enrique's been a little bit of a slow starter to begin with all 3 seasons, but he always gets his numbers kind of to where he needs them to be. He was down like 220 batting average for a while. He's at 308 now, and I think he's picked up 28, maybe 27 consecutive games getting on base, some sort of like silly number. It was like 16 consecutive games with a walk. So he's right where he needs to be.
Andrew Allegretta, voice of the Commodores, at @Allegretta on Twitter is how you can follow him. Andrew, let's wrap with this. One more individual, but then 2, I just want your parting shots or your parting gifts, thoughts as we prepare for the big series between Vanderbilt and Tennessee and what it means to both fan bases. As Tennessee is still kind of relatively new to this being legitimate in baseball kind of thing, at least relative to the last decade or so. But
with consistency, yeah.
Yes.
They've been to the College World Series,
Sure.
but with consistency for sure.
Absolutely. R.J. Schreck, though, leading the team in SEC play, 411 batting average, 6 home runs, 27 RBIs. What do we got to do to get you one of those Schreck masks that I saw one of the fans wearing the other day at the Hawk to call a game? Maybe at least for one inning.
What's the vision status with those?
You're going to have to figure it out, my friend. You might have to get a knife and kind of create a little bit bigger eye sockets, but I just needed to cover your head the way I saw the one fan. I don't know if this was this past week or where I saw it.
They travel. I saw at least 3 in Columbia, Missouri. So they travel.
Awesome.
Okay?
The Shrekkies travel. All right.
Yeah, the Shrekkies do travel, which is fantastic. It's funny. I remember talking to him at the start of the season. And first off, he was not born, obviously, when the first Shrek came out. So this is all
obviously.
He post-dates Shrek. I think he said by the time like the second or third Shrek came out, he had been born. He's heard everything, get out of my swamp and all of that sort of stuff. So I do think he probably appreciats the fact that that sort of stuff is on his side these days.
If you
Who's his donkey?
Okay, we're gonna get deep here. You strike me as more of the donkey, or are you a gingerbread man?
I'm probably the gingerbread man.
Gingerbread man?
Yeah.
I like, people would like to say I resemble Shrek. However, I like the big bad wolf. Is that what he goes by, big bad wolf? I'm more a big bad wolf.
Yeah, I would peg you as more of a big bad wolf than a Shrek for sure.
Puss in Boots.
But you're still
Andrew,
looking
though,
for your
right?
Fiona.
Yeah, I am. I'm not. Look, I don't think it's happening anytime soon. Andrew, so.
Well, your life advice is stay single for the rest of your life. So.
Yeah.
Or learn how to tie a bow tie.
Oh,
it's one of the two things.
There we go.
That as well. Andrew, let's get you on this. What's the anticipation like for this weekend? Obviously, it's a business trip from a Vanderbilt standpoint, but these two fan bases and the animosity maybe between the two, I mean, I would think this would be especially charged up given, again, Tennessee's struggles to this point in the year.
I'm so curious to see what that place is going to be. For me, it's my first trip there for baseball. I've seen it for football. I think there's a lot of anticipation of rowdiness. No surprise. But beyond all of that, I'm curious to see what Tennessee does. They're not going to play like a 5-10 baseball team. Zero part of me thinks that they're going to play like that. But they're not the team that came here to Hawkins Field a season ago, ranked number 1 in the country. Vanderbilt was 9, and they just toasted us. I mean, that was a rough 3 days for Vanderbilt a season ago. So I'm curious to see what they supply. I don't think Vanderbilt, and I know this is so ridiculously coaching cliche, is going to provide much different because Coach Corbin demands as much. I mean, I've had any number of conversations with Coach Corbin, with Coach Brown, about body language, emotional control, emotional maturity. That doesn't mean guys that are 18, 19, and 20 execute that very well, but the coaching staff absolutely demands it. So I'm curious to see exactly what Tennessee provides. They're going to be good. The games are going to be tight. And if Tennessee wins the series, I'm not going to be shocked. But I want to see how they respond, right? They didn't just come off a series loss. Like us, they also lost on Tuesday. For what it's worth, the team that they lost to has an RPI, I think, in the 200s.
Yep. 275.
Yeah, and Indiana State was number 19. There's a difference there. So I'm very curious to see exactly what Tennessee provides. I don't know what to expect. I think it'll be a charged-up atmosphere. There's a lot of awareness about mechanically how we go about our business and where we're placed in the stadium, and I mean that from like a support staff standpoint, right? Like sometimes support staff is outside and this, that, and the other thing. I don't think there's much of a desire for the support staff to be outside. Certainly not in Vanderbilt gear. So we know all that stuff is likely coming this weekend. But I don't know. Like the thing that's been interesting to me about the opponents that Vanderbilt has played so far this season is I've never really been able to figure out the appropriate way to articulate this. I don't know that some of the series we've played, we have felt the opponent's best counterpunch. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We've been able to punch. They've punched back. But for how long and how strong, I don't know. And I'm curious to see what sort of counterpunch Tennessee has this weekend. I suspect they'll have one. But if we can set the table in some capacity, how strong is the counterpunch? They've got it. They're more than capable of winning this series. But psychologically, where are they at the moment? 5-10 and coming off a loss to Tennessee Tech at home.
And Tennessee is certainly. Sorry, go ahead. Finish your point.
No. And what's our pitching staff look like? That's the other part. I don't know. Again, 10:37 in the morning on a Thursday. I don't know. If we've got Carter and Hulton and Devin, and we can have a healthy Grayson Carter and Patrick Riley and Nick Maldonado and Thomas Schultz, and the list goes on, we'll be okay. That doesn't mean we'll win. It just means we'll be okay. But if we've got the pitching staff and their counterpunch doesn't have as much muscle as it did last year, I don't know. I'm curious.
And Tennessee is, hearing all of this talk about how their backs are against the wall. They might not even make it to Hoover. They might not make the postseason field of 64. They just got knocked out of the top 25 per D1 baseball this week. So they're going to be as charged up as ever for sure. It should be a phenomenal series this weekend at Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Have a great series of calls, and we're looking forward to catching up with you again in Hoover, Andrew. Thanks for the time.
Dude, thanks for being so
guys.
gracious, man. Even in spite of the false start, man. Appreciate all the time.
Hey, I learned a little bit about bow ties and all sorts of Shrek Mass opportunities. So this is good. It's all good.
It's the kind of content you get on College Sports Now. Thanks, Andrew. We'll talk again soon. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Andrew Allegretta, voice of the Vanderbilt Commodores. So happy you can join us. Great conversation. A lot of interesting tidbits specifically about the Commodore team, but also some big picture, overarching items, low-hanging fruit in terms of the way Vanderbilt is viewed. Even Tim Corbin, for example, and what he's built there, and how the Commodores kind of draw the ire of every other team, not just within the league, but even nationally. And you can draw a number of conclusions from that with Andrew, who gave us a very honest assessment, a very thorough assessment of the Vanderbilt program.
He did. I think the coolest thing that I took away from all of that, one, that Tim Corbin is a WWE fan. That's awesome. I would have never pegged that from him, from how, as Andrew put it, stoic he is and calm and cool and collected, like you said in that question to him on the field. But the other thing is that they're so self-aware of the body language they present on the mound and how they need to continue to remain relaxed but not, lackadaisical. They need to be alert. They need to be stepping in and being prepared for every pitch, every at-bat that they have. That is something that you do not see across all of college baseball when you look at a entire team, right? You may see certain players protrude that kind of aura when they're on the mound or at the plate or in the field. Tim Corbin holds his entire team to that standard, and I'm actually interested to watch them in Hoover this year because I didn't get a chance to see them at all because they were mostly in the night session. I'm interested to see how quick of a hook he has on guys that may be showing a less than 100% type feel on the diamond in the biggest environment of the season, the SEC tournament. Now, Vanderbilt right now projected to host, projected to make the field, whatever. They're a top 8 national seed, so their season's most likely going to continue post-Hoover. But like Andrew was saying, the bigger the environment, the more locked in Tim Corbin needs his team to be, the more elevated their game needs to be. So I'm very intrigued to watch that play out in Hoover should I get to see Vanderbilt in the games that I watch.
Vanderbilt has 9 guys who have all collected at least 20 RBIs too. Offensively, they are delivering in so many different ways, multitude of different ways. Various spots in the order are coming through at the right time. R.J. Schreck, who I chronicled in that conversation with Andrew, leading the team with a .411 batting average. He's got 6 bombs, 27 RBIs just in SEC play alone. Called a couple of his games last year while he was playing for Duke. He was coming off a massive year that helped enable the Blue Devils to win their first ACC championship of any kind, the tournament title in Charlotte. That was in the 2021 season, in forever, since the 60s. And Schreck had kind of a downturn in his final year with the Blue Devils. He battled some injuries and decided to seek refuge elsewhere and left for Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt's been one of those teams too, Kahn, in a way that I think people don't give him credit, or they feel that in the transfer portal era that Vandy, is really utilizing. I don't think Vanderbilt utilizes the portal the way a lot of other teams have.
They just recruit really well.
They recruit that they can get anybody they want.
Yeah, it's Vanderbilt.
And it's because of the endowment and everything else involved with the Commodores. So, but Schreck is one of those anomalies, and that tells you everything you know about a guy like R.J. Schreck, that Tim Corbin went out and got this guy and brought him in to be a part of the program.
Right. If you're going to transfer into Vanderbilt, if you're going to be recruited by Vanderbilt, you have to be able to work in the Tim Corbin way. It's like the New England Patriots. You have to follow the Bill Belichick way. Tim Corbin's not just going to go get any guy that's hitting 400 and, put him in his system. He's going to want to know you as a person, as a ball player, as a leader, as a role model. How do you fit all of these numerous categories? And if you do that and also hit 400, that's great. Or you throw 98 strikeouts a season. That's phenomenal. But just because you put up these eye-popping numbers, that doesn't mean you can become a part of the Vanderbilt program, and that's probably why he doesn't dip into the transfer portal as much, because with the transfer portal, there's just all these guys out there, and you can go pick and choose. Recruiting, you have an opportunity to get to know this player over now just a 2-year period officially because of the new NCAA baseball recruiting model that will go into play 6 days from today on April the 26th and be retroactive to current recruits. But, for a guy like Tim Corbin, you have a full 2 years to get to know the underlying values of the players you're recruiting out of high school versus in college. These guys are established and looking for a new home. They're going to take the first route they've got. So if Tim Corbin says, I need 3 weeks, and LSU says, we'll take you now, guess what? They're going to LSU. So it may be a bit of missing out for Tim Corbin, but I think he's okay with that, and him and his staff have accepted that as, hey, we're going to get our guys. Not necessarily the guys that everyone's targeting, but the guys that fit the way we play baseball, the guys that fit the way we run this team and want this team to operate. And guess what? It works, because 4 years ago, they won it all. They've won it before. They'll win it again. They're very, very good, and right now they're leading the SEC.
Let's react to some of these Field of 64 projections, shall we?
Yeah.
D1Baseball.com came out with what was, let's call it 2.0, Field of 64 2.0. Their
second version. Yep.
Second version of NCAA tournament projections. They do the Nerdcast as well. I listened to that this morning as I was completing part 1 of 2 of my run for today. I'm breaking up what is 6 miles across 2 different spurts today, so I just have to run 3 tomorrow, and then I'm done. I can take Saturday off. Anyways, got the Nerdcast in my veins. Aaron Fitt, Kendall Rogers, and Mark Etheridge are the 3 who are responsible with parsing through all of the nation's best teams that are locks to be in, the bubble teams, who's in, who's out. Arkansas, ECU, here's the differences from their first set of projections a couple of weeks ago. Top 8 national seeds as Boston College and Oklahoma State drop out of the hosting picture altogether.
Yeah, they're gone.
Altogether.
Yeah, BC's at 17 now, so they're right there, but Oklahoma State's now 32nd after they've stumbled.
What a fall. What a fall for the Cowboys. Coastal Carolina, UConn, Indiana enter the top 16 field. So they're ones that are in line with hosting for that regional weekend, which is coming up June 3rd.
Second.
And second is Thursday?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
It's Friday through Monday.
Oh, yeah, they don't do a Thursday.
Second through 5th.
Okay.
That starts with, because then you go to the 3-game series, Friday to Sunday, Saturday to Monday for Supers.
Gotcha.
So June 2nd to the 5th is regional weekend, which, again, we do have something in the works, but we're not going to tell you what it is yet. It's exciting, though.
6.5 weeks or so away from that, I think. I'm not a math guy.
Yeah.
Can't remember what we said the
Six
other
and a half, because a couple days ago we were 6 weeks away from first pitch in Hoover. So
beautiful. SEC has 10 teams represented. ACC has 9. Big 12 and Pac-12, each with 5. Sunbelt with 4. Big 10 with 3. Big West Conference USA and Colonial Athletic Association, all with 2 teams projected into the NCAA field of 64. Last 5 in, first 5 out, Kahn. Go ahead and rattle those off, and maybe who you're most surprised at that is getting in versus somebody that's among the first 5 out.
Yeah, so last 5 in, I'll start there. We've got Mississippi State, Troy, Iowa, Texas State, and USC. And I think 2 of those stand out to me more than most. One is Mississippi State, just because of how out of it they were 2 weeks ago, and they flipped the switch, it seems. Obviously, the win over Ole Miss is the worst team in the SEC right now, so you kind of weigh that a little bit differently, but it is still a Southeastern Conference Series win, so that gets higher weighted than another, an ACC team winning or a Big 12 Series win, et cetera, et cetera. Mississippi State, I was surprised to see them in the field. Not that they don't deserve it, but I was just surprised at the massive jump they took.
How quickly it can change.
Right, exactly.
Just like Oklahoma State falling out of the hosting.
Right, they've got the talent. We've talked about that. Ledbetter on offense and their pitching staff has started to figure it out. And Chris Lemonis has obviously been there and done that before. He's 2 years removed from a national title. The other one that I think surprised me a little bit was USC. Andy Stankiewicz and his crew have done a great job in his inaugural season at USC. I'm just curious, the resume for USC right now, how it's deserving of a spot in the field of 64. I looked over it and I don't know. I mean, you know me. I've been down on the Pac-12 this whole year, and you just saw Arizona State last night.
Pac-12 hater. This guy at SportsCon 4.
You're right. This year I've been a Pac-12 hater, but you've seen. Like, Arizona State just got pummeled by Arizona. Arizona State, the leader in the Pac-12, got pummeled 20-0 last night by Arizona.
Territorial Cup.
Yeah, but Arizona's in the bottom of the Pac-12. So, these guys are just cannibalizing each other over and over and over again, and I don't know how that equates out to, putting USC, who's now down, gone down the last couple of weeks, trended out of the top 25 to getting a spot in the field of 64. I mean, maybe it's just because they've still put up enough reasonable results that they're still in for right now. I don't know. I feel like they're going to trend the wrong way and eventually fall out of this field. Their
RPI 66. They just got swept by Oregon State. They only have 2 wins inside the RPI top 50.
There's the numbers. Yeah, the resume didn't speak to me as a team in the field of 64. Now, granted, Ole Miss's resume didn't speak to anybody as being in the field of 64, and guess what? They won the whole dang thing last year. So, this is just prognosticating right now, and again, we're still 6 weekends away from the ranking, from the field being released. So we've got time. Like, prove me wrong, USC, but right now I don't see it for the Trojans.
It'll be 6 weeks from Monday is Memorial Day. That is Selection Show Monday.
Right. First 5 out: Auburn, Xavier, Rutgers, Long Beach State, your boys at Rocco Pepe are first 5 out, and the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, located in Lafayette, Louisiana, but they go by Louisiana for their athletic programs only. Just to clarify who I'm talking about.
There was too much of that in my Twitter feed this week,
dude.
Figuring out how to characterize or properly identify Louisiana.
So
Lafayette.
Their athletic department asks to be called the University of Louisiana Raging Cajuns, but they're in Lafayette. So I think the way you can kind of clarify for people who don't know about the School of University of Louisiana, instead of saying University of Louisiana Lafayette, you say University of Louisiana at Lafayette. Because you're not calling them Louisiana Lafayette. They don't want to be called that anymore. Now the school is that.
Yeah, up until like the last
couple
of 4
years.
years ago.
The school is the University of Louisiana Lafayette, but their athletic teams want to be called the University of Louisiana. That's what they've requested you call them. So I'm thinking if you're an opposing broadcaster, you can say Louisiana at Lafayette and you kind of, toe that line a little bit.
At least you're identifying for those that aren't familiar.
Where they're located. Yeah. Right, and that's all you're doing.
That's
you're
a
not
flex,
trying
by the way.
to disrespect the University of Louisiana, but you have to help your audience know where you are.
Big time flex.
It is.
By Louisiana.
Yeah, because I
say, hey, we are the University of Louisiana.
Especially when you've got LSU.
Yes.
Louisiana State University, by the way.
Yeah.
I agree with you there. From the first 5 out, I don't know that any of these terribly surprised me. I guess I would go with Xavier as probably one that surprises me, that they're among the first 5 out. I mean, the Big East, what did we say we're right now getting in? They have none. Or no, that's not true.
Yeah, it would just be 2 with Xavier, I think, according to the projections.
UConn was
UConn
one.
and Xavier.
Yeah, so that's right. Yeah, so 2 with UConn and Xavier. And I don't know. I don't see more than one getting in from there right now. Whoever wins the tournament.
I really don't either. I think
whoever wins the tournament, I'm surprised that Xavier's that close.
The opposite argument can be made for Long Beach State, who is among the first 5 out, but I think there's time with their schedule, with some notables still ahead. They have UC Santa Barbara and Cal State Fullerton still on their schedule. A Long Beach State team that already went to Greenville, went 3-0, in the Keith LeClaire Classic, beating Georgetown, beating Indiana and ECU, which are two very loud wins.
Especially with Indiana hosting now in Bloomington.
Absolutely. So Long Beach State, I think, is a team that is going to be able to – they've got enough meat left on their bone with their schedule to be able to work their way in. You brought up bringing up Mississippi State. I did just want to highlight their line as among the first four in. Last five into the field, as D1Baseball.com configures it. Mississippi State, an RPI of 26, 22-15 overall. In the non-con, they're 17-5. They're 15-9 at home. But how about this? They don't have any bad losses.
Yeah.
Which is another part of this formula. Like, we're talking about good wins and beating, teams who are RPI top 25, RPI top 50 teams, but they haven't lost to anybody they shouldn't lose to. They are 10-2 against teams outside the top 100. 10-2. So they've lost just 2 games. And then inside the top 100, they're going to get those chances playing inside the SEC, but they are 12 and 13. So they're a game below 500 in terms of the opportunities that they're getting. But again, they just now have won back-to-back SEC series. They're rounding into form. We think they're playing their best baseball we've seen from them in 2 years.
Absolutely. And really, the injuries just killed them last year. Like, Landon Sims at the beginning of the year going out, and then it just kind of derailed from there. But
and their strength of schedule is 4 overall.
Right, exactly. What they play in the SEC.
Yeah.
But you look at Mississippi State, and you bring up a great point, and that's why I think it was Matt Tarnawa on Twitter from the Missouri Radio Network that said every team that makes it to Hoover should make the regionals. And it's because of how tough their schedule is. And even with some of those midweek RPIs that you lose, like Andrew said, Vanderbilt lost to Indiana State. Indiana State's got an RPI of 19. They're at the top of the Missouri Valley. They're not a bad team. They have a number 19 RPI. That's incredible. Now, Tennessee, you lose to a 275 RPI Tennessee Tech. That's going to hurt you. But it all goes back to the conversation of, RPI and how much the committee values it right now. And that's why, I'm assuming we're going to start seeing some teams canceling their RPI midweek or their midweek games for RPI purposes, like Jim Schlossnagle did last year with Texas A&M, because it's only going to hurt their resume. But I tend to agree with what Matt was saying. And by the way, it's his birthday today, so happy birthday, Matt.
Happy birthday, Matt.
Fellow Learfield employee. Happy birthday, sir.
I love you.
But I just remember I noticed that this morning. But anyways, there's all this conversation about, should midweeks be played? How much do they matter? They hurt, some of these powerhouses more than help them, and they help the mid-majors a lot more. And where's the perfect middle ground? I don't know if there is. Until the committee says we're not going to put as much weight on RPI as they do, I don't know how you fix the system other than just saying we're not going to play the game. And, okay, the coaches have to have some kind of way to punch back, right? And say, well, this game's only going to hurt us. Why on earth would we play it? And, yeah, the mid-majors might be like, well, we want to play it. We want to beat you. We want to get that signature win on our schedule. And, unfortunately, they're not at home. They're on the road. So they're at the mercy of the other team. And if that high major wants to say, well, we want some rest because our guys are tired. We have injuries. We need to rest for the weekend for our SEC, ACC, Big 12 series. And us beating you doesn't help us, but us losing to you hurts us. Why on earth would you play that game? It makes sense from a coaching perspective.
It does. There's so much more to lose. Yeah, that's what it boils down to.
Right, and that's why you see teams getting dragged for losing midweek games. But to some degree, players want to play. But there's the other side of the coin that I just mentioned, where the committee puts so much weight on RPI, and if your RPI is going to go down for beating a bad team in the midweek, why play the game?
Speaking of midweeks, Missouri and Kentucky, the only 2 remaining unbeaten SEC teams in the midweek. Yep. After LSU went down against Louisiana at Lafayette.
Yes.
It was in Baton Rouge, but I was trying, playing into the characterization of the school. The Raging Cajuns.
Kentucky has had a much tougher non-conference schedule than Missouri. We do need to put that out there. Missouri's non-conference strength of schedule is in the 200s. Kentucky is
the number one RPI.
Yeah.
Number one strength of schedule, number one RPI, 29-7. They're 19-2 against non-con teams. That non-con strength of schedule is 49. The RPI is at 1. They're 19-1 at home, 10-6 on the road.
Crazy.
17-6 against RPI top 50 teams, 6-0 against teams worse than 100 with an RPI, 6-1, 51-100. I mean, the Wildcats, and the fact they got one win against LSU, too, this past weekend.
Almost two.
Almost two.
They almost won the series. They lost the final game by 1 run.
It was just the 16-6 one that got away from them.
Yeah, here's the wild thing about Kentucky. Coming into the season, the only player that had significant playing time in the field for Kentucky from last year's team was their backup catcher, Devin Burks. The only guy that had any significant playing time in the field was Devin Burks. I mean, they lost so many guys to the draft. They lost Guilfoyle. They lost Estep. They lost their other closer whose name is escaping me right now. Or Guilfoyle was their closer. They lost their setup man, Daniel something. I forget, but they lost their Friday and Saturday night starters. Like, they lost so much talent. And yet here they are sticking with the best teams in the country again with the toughest strength of schedule. I brought up Indiana State moments ago, beating Vanderbilt. They have the toughest non-conference strength of schedule in the country. And yet still, their RPI is at 19, which means they've been handling it well. And you can see that because they're at the top of the Missouri Valley with a big series coming up this weekend against Southern Illinois. Top two teams in the MVC squaring off.
I got their RPI now at 12.
Oh, it increased. Okay. I may have looked at it before the results were tabulated by Warren Nolan. So, which is where I look for RPI. I think you looked there as well.
And this is, I did, but I've gotten more used to the D1 baseball filter. And with an RPI of 12, just to further illustrate the point of how a team that's a Power 5 club, that's cut from, either blue blood cloth or as close to it, being a Power 5 team, they're going to get opportunities more than likely, unless you're Pac-12 or even the Big 12, because they're beating themselves up this year. I mean, look at Texas Tech. They just barely kind of sneak into the field. They're not among the last 5 in, but a team like Indiana State, who has an RPI of 12, yet they've only played 8 games in total against RPI top 50 teams. Mm-hmm. Yet they've been able to accumulate and build together an RPI of 12 type resume. 2-5 against top 25 teams, 0-3 against teams in the RPI from 26 to 50, and then they're 16-1 against teams worse than 100 with an RPI. So again, they're beating everyone they're supposed to.
Right, they're winning the games they're supposed to. But there's the argument in the midweeks that we're supposed to beat this team. If we beat them, why does it hurt us? From the high majors. I really enjoyed looking through this field of 64 and the different regionals that we're going to see.
Which one do you love?
Which one do I love? Oh, my God, the Northeast Regional. Oh, I think that's wide open in stores. Connecticut, Boston College, and Northeastern, who all just played each other in a 3-team run robin this week. Northeastern beat UConn, and then UConn came back and thumped Boston College last night.
It's like a beanpot region.
It is. They just all played each other in the beanpot too. That's right. And then they had BC won the beanpot, by the way. Congrats to the Eagles. Central Connecticut State is the 4th team in that regional. I think UConn, BC, or Northeastern could emerge from that easily. I think that one's wide open. As for some of the other ones that are out there, as you look through, I'll let you kind of decide which one you love the
Central
most.
Connecticut State, sneaky.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what regional they're at most recently, but they have a gaudy record, 21-7, 16-2 in the Northeastern Conference. 16-2.
Look, anyone can come out of there, apparently. Mississippi State, by the way, we were talking about them just sneaking into the field. You know what they get, though? They go to Winston-Salem. Take on not only Wake Forest, but Elon, too. Powerhouse in the CAA along with UNCW. Tennessee, I think, got a little bit of a better draw. They're in the Bloomington Regional right now as a 3 seed. Louisville and Indiana along with Kent State. All good teams, but I think Tennessee got a slightly easier draw.
Come on, man. Throw some respect on IU's name.
I said slightly easier draw. I didn't say it was a given.
Indiana is second in the Big Ten behind Nebraska right now. They've played more games, though, but Indiana is 20-1 at home with an RPI of 15. They have Ohio this weekend.
Take a look at the Austin Regional. Texas A&M, Texas State, and Oral Roberts. Offense.
Holy smokes.
Oh, my goodness. That is going to be a blast. And if you look at the one they're paired with in Fayetteville, Arkansas, DBU, Texas Tech, Sam Houston. I mean, you wanted a Stillwater, battering ram repeat. You're going to have two, and the winners of those two are going to play each other. It's great. That also stood out to me.
That is some blue collar, bring your lunch pail to work, your sledgehammer, just a slugfest paired with, I think, phenomenal pitching at times, incredible defense. I mean, high-level baseball. The Arkansas and Texas, two regions that are paired up. I didn't even notice that. I wasn't looking at super regional pairings in terms of who could come out, but man, geographically, too, and some of the rivalries that exist there, talking about Arkansas and Texas potentially rematching from what was the college baseball showdown earlier this year at Globe Life. You've got Texas Tech in Fayetteville along with DBU, potential to have Texas A&M or Texas State or Texas. You throw RU. Man, that's juicy.
And then the other one I wanted to point out, because a couple weeks ago I thought Florida got an amazing draw and could easily finally break that hump and get to a super regional. Well, now they've got Southern Miss, Virginia Tech, and Maine. It ain't so easy for the Gators anymore. Now, granted, this Florida team I think is better than the previous two teams that have lost those regionals in Gainesville. But that's a tough regional to come out of with Southern Miss, Virginia Tech, and Maine as the other three teams you've got to emerge from. Those are all good teams. I mean, goodness gracious. If that is the regional they have, throw a dart at the wall. That's a really, really tough Gainesville regional.
Watch out for the Dukies. They are hitting their stride. They are dangerous.
Two seed in Greenville.
They beat William & Mary 7-0, another shutout for the Blue Devils. I think that's 6 shutouts on the season, fourth most all-time in a single year for the Blue Devils. Got outstanding midweek pitching and shutting down a William & Mary team. Again, another resume-building win in the midweek over a mid-major team, a team that is near the top of the CAA, a league that's likely going to get multiple bids. And Duke was able to take care of business, and they're doing all of this, too, likely without Jonathan Santucci, their ace pitcher for the rest of the year.
Is he out for the year?
It's like Kendall Rogers suggested as much earlier this week that is a possibility. Duke is deep.
They already were without
in
Luke
the
Fox the
in the
entire
bullpen.
Year.
Yeah, it's the starting pitching, but Ryan Higgins really showed up in a big role this past weekend when the Blue Devils had taken 2 out of 3 from Boston College. The offense is starting to click up and down the order. You had Andrew Fisher getting to double digits with home runs. The freshman hit his 10th. He's now leading the team. I mean, that dude is lights out. Alex Moody had another home run the other day for the Blue Devils. So I really like what Duke is doing. And coming up for them, after taking 2 out of 3 at Boston College, they return home to the DBAP. They're going to have 12th-ranked Louisville coming into town this weekend before a game at Campbell. So you go from BC, William & Mary, but Louisville and then Campbell, just a cluster of teams all inside the top 15, more opportunities for the Blue Devils. And as you look at their resume currently, try to find it here. I know it's inside the top 15. 29, RPI of 29 with a strength schedule of 25. They are 9-8 against teams inside the top 50, the RPI, and 11-2 against teams outside the top 100. So one more thing I want to circle to on the Big Ten before we look at the lineup card, and if you have any more final thoughts on these projections, feel free. Rutgers was among
first 5 out.
First 5 out. So Rutgers has a better RPI than Maryland just by 7 spots. Rutgers with an RPI of 48, Maryland with 55. So that's something to kind of pay attention to as one of those teams might be able to trade the other one out. I don't know offhand if they played in the early portion of the Big Ten schedule to this point, but Rutgers just 1-6 against the RPI top 50. Maryland, meanwhile, is 3-6. So they do at least have more wins inside the top 50.
The one thing I will put against Rutgers right now, they're 0-3 against teams in the 100 to 150 range in the RPI. That's bringing them down right now, for sure. No, I think we've touched on all the schedules. I mean, I was talking to the baseball voice of the App State Mountaineers a couple nights ago, Matt President, about the Sun Belt. I mean, they're a top 5 RPI conference. So it'll be very interesting to see how many teams from the Sun Belt get in. And I know you're going to feature the Fun Belt coming up with your surefire lock of the weekend.
I'm going to get it ready right now.
As you're going to get ready. So, we talked about Southern Miss and the Slade Wilkes hilarious graphic that was our SDA on Tuesday, Social Display of Affection, where he had as many RBIs as James Madison had as James Madison had in the entire series until they scored one more run.
James Madison is one of our founding fathers, but
Slade Wilkes is their daddy. Yes, great tweet by Southern Miss that Schass unearthed as well. But you've got Appalachian State right there. You've got Southern Miss. You've got James Madison. You got a bunch of teams in the Sun Belt that are capable of getting into this field of 64. You've got in the CAA right now, I think there was 4 teams projected in the CAA. No, just 2 right now. But there could I like the top 4 in the CAA because right now, as I pull up the standings hurriedly, I looked at these a couple of days ago. It's UNCW, Elon, Northeastern, and Charleston are the top 4. I like all 4 of those teams.
I like all 4. I think 3 potentially could get in.
Yeah. I mean, Northeastern and Elon are in right now. UNCW's not, but I think UNCW is capable of getting into that field for sure. And Charleston, if they play their cards right, I mean, absolutely. They've got the 3rd best record in the CAA right now. So, keep your eyes on the CAA and the Sun Belt right now. Top 5 RPI conference, according to D1 Baseball and Warren Nolan. All right, are you ready with your surefire lock of the weekend? By the way, you hit last weekend.
I did.
Mississippi State wins their 2nd straight series. They took the series over Ole Miss. You shot, you put it through the net. It swished. Good for you. Do we ride you now, or are we on the Schass train?
I'm pretty sure I've had 2 weeks in a row.
I think you have
of hitting. Most recently, it was Mississippi State taking 2 out of 3 from Ole Miss. So I went with the Bulldogs on Super Bulldog Weekend. And on a weekend, I don't know if you've run through all these matchups.
I haven't. I have not done the lineup card yet.
I black out sometimes when you start talking because I'm trying to prepare what I'm doing next with my life. But there are 3 series in all of college baseball that are beginning on Thursday. Just 3: Arkansas and Georgia, Florida and South Carolina, UNCG. Is that BYU?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so those are the 3 series that are getting underway on Thursday. Among these others. Go ahead and roll through them, Kahn. I mean, Southern Illinois, Indiana State, top 2 teams in the MVC squaring off this weekend. Indiana State has won 11 straight. Beat Vandy in the midweek. RPI up to 12 now. Yeah. Southern Illinois won the Missouri Valley Conference regular season last year. Speaking of winning streaks, I think Army's at like 11 in a row now, too.
Oh. Yeah. Okay. So the other ones, that was the series of the weekend for me, was Southern Illinois and Indiana State. The other one that stood out to me, Wake Forest, number 2 in the country, back on the road. They just beat Louisville. Now they got to go to Pittsburgh. Can they win it 2 weekends in a row on the road against the Pitt Panthers? They won their midweek against Liberty this past week, yesterday at David F. Couch Ballpark. They're now 21-1, I think, at home, which is just insanity. But they're going to take on a Pitt team that just lost to West Virginia at PNC Park in their annual meeting at the Pirates home facility. Florida is taking on South Carolina in Columbia, one of those 3 Thursday through Saturday series that you mentioned. The other one is Arkansas at Georgia, and then UNCG at BYU. Vanderbilt, we mentioned, at Tennessee. Vols have not won a series since that March 24th to 26th sweep of Texas A&M.
So that's 4 in a row.
Yeah.
4 series lost.
I think it's 3 in a row.
Okay.
Yeah. And then number 10, Coastal Carolina at number 24, Southern Miss. Number 1, number 3 in the Sun Belt. That's going to be a pivotal matchup, especially for tiebreakers coming down the stretch of the regular season. Number 13, Kentucky and Texas A&M. The Wildcats have suddenly stumbled. We were praising them for how tough their schedule has been and how they've performed, but they've lost back-to-back series, a bad one to Georgia, but the LSU one, not so much. They were close to winning that series. The Aggies, though, have not lost a series since that sweep by Tennessee back in late March. So Jim Schlossnagle has his Texas A&M squad firing on all cylinders. Number 19, Arizona State, stumbled in the midweek. They got absolutely demolished by Arizona, 20-0. They take on Oregon State. ASU came into the week with a slim half-game lead over Stanford in the Pac-12 standings, and Stanford got, drubbed last weekend. And then number 20, Boston College, is on the road this week at number 18, North Carolina. Eagles, of course, dropped out of the hosting picture this week. We mentioned that. But they're right there. They're like 17-18 right now in the overall standings. They're still in the field of 64 comfortably, but they're going to need to string some wins together because the rest of the ACC is getting hot.
All right, you ready for my surefire lock?
Dude, I've been
weekend?
Ready. Lock me in.
I'm going to the Fun Belt. A battle of the Sun Belt leading Coastal Carolina Chanticleers as they host Southern Miss.
Mm-hmm. I know what you're picking.
The Golden Eagles are ranked 3rd in the league. but a massive showdown in terms of the implications when it comes to seizing control of this league, possibly putting themselves firmly in the driver's seat if you're Coastal Carolina for what would be the top overall seed in the Sun Belt Tournament, which formats itself, I don't think they've changed it at all, but even with the additions of the teams, much like the SEC tournament, when we get to the end of May. And the Golden Eagles are surging after a slow start. They're back in the top 25 rankings. Now, Southern Miss did lose to Louisiana Tech on Tuesday night. So Southern Miss will bring in what is a 22-13 overall record, 10-5 in league play. And for Coastal Carolina, 24-11, 11-4 in the conference. Again, each of these teams are ranked. Coastal Carolina is, number 10. So the Shots come in as the 10th best team in the country, according to D1 Baseball. And Southern Miss at 24. Golden Eagles on the road, hostile environment, a team that has pitched well all year. Just now finding their offense. Slade Wilkes, reigning Sunbelt Offensive Player of the Week. And for Coastal Carolina, at one point, a couple of weeks ago, they were super good offensively, near the top of the Sunbelt, statistically. But very poor pitching-wise. They've closed the gap. They're becoming more balanced at this point of the year. However, I think Southern Miss is going to have a little bit more to play for this weekend. That's why.
There it is.
Southern Miss to the top. SMTT, baby. Get some. Hashtag. Put it in your veins. Eat it. Throw it all over your body. Rub it around every crevice that you have. Golden Eagles are going to take at least 2 out of 3. I'm not going sweep, but they will win the series over Coastal Carolina. I've learned my lesson on calling sweeps. Yeah, there's no point in that.
No. Anything can happen on Sunday. Yeah. We've seen that. What soap are you using to rub that all over in every crevice of your body?
What soap?
Yeah.
Dove.
Okay.
Dove is the best bar of soap.
That would satisfy our fellow CS Now tweetsers and podcasters, Stephen Hartzell and Michael Surber, because they were talking on Hand of the Dirt the other week about how the use of natural soap bars. And they were discussing whether the merits of Irish Spring versus Dove versus there's some one with an S like squash or not squash. It's not Sasquatch.
So
I forget. Surber uses one that's some kind of a little bit out there one, but it works and he likes it. Versus like an Old Spice type deal. That's why I was asking.
Yeah. So as a kid, I grew up on bars of soap. So it was always Ivory, and then my mom would use the Dove. You would have to go behind her back to use the Dove.
Oh, wow. She coveted it.
That was for her. Yes, it was coveted. You could use it on your face, perhaps, but not the rest of your body. You didn't want to put it in those crevices, if you know what I mean. Other people are using that, Even
I don't want to
if it's
share a
in-house,
soap bar.
Okay?
No.
Yeah, you got to be careful.
Yeah.
So it was always bars throughout my life, even in college, because that's what I was used to. And then, though, I get out of college or in college, and I'm seeing everybody with their loofahs and walking, in the dorms to the showers, and they've got, like, liquid soap. And I'm like, liquid soap? I don't know anything about this. This is like 2007.
That's what I use.
I was late to the liquid soap party. Yeah. So now, primarily, I am a liquid soap guy.
Yeah.
I since have migrated over the last, 15 years or so to become a liquid-only type guy. I'm not too picky. I don't mind the Old Spice or the Suave. Sometimes, though, I will get a little bougie and get something a little fancy if it's on sale or whatever, but I don't want to overspend for my soap. I want to smell good.
Exactly.
But I care more about the cologne, the fragrance spray, or the body butter and lotions. That is my bread and butter.
Body butter?
Body butter.
That's
my body and butter.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. It is Dr. Squatch is the one that I was not remembering for Michael Surber that he uses on his body. I'm an Irish Spring, Old Spice, or Dove guy. I've used Suave too, but anyways, that's neither here nor there. Okay, so you're going with Southern Miss to the top.
Southern Miss to the top.
All right.
Mark it down. Do we have anything else we need to talk about?
You wanted to do some national lookalike.
Yeah,
things,
we don't got it. I'm over it.
Okay, he's over it. Well,
you are McLovin.
I am McLovin. Who are you?
I have no idea.
Well,
I'm a unicorn. I'm every
you
man's
are your
man.
own unique person.
Yeah, I don't look like anybody.
What about Michael Surber?
Ooh.
Who was unable to join us today due to a
What
conflict.
comes to mind, and when I had hair, like in high school, people thought I looked like Ashton Kutcher or Jack Black.
Yeah,
Surber's got a little bit of Jack Black.
I'd go more Jack. If you want to be Ashton Kutcher, I'll give Surber Jack Black.
Yeah, so either of those could work. I'm seeing if I got my favorite, my high school mugshot, my senior year picture.
Were you arrested?
Oh, yeah, here it is. right there. Look
Yeah,
at that.
that's Ashton Kutcher.
Look at those locks.
Absolutely.
Look
yeah,
how
that's
beautiful that man is.
That's very Ashton Kutcher.
He is so
Yeah.
sexy.
I mean, look, nothing's changed.
All right, Surber, I told him not even to bother, so let's get out. We
All
good?
right. Yeah,
All
I mean,
right.
I'm good. Let's have a good weekend.
At SportsCon4, at Kyle Schass, at CS Now Tweets is where you can find us. Support us. Interact with us. Tell your friends. And make sure you get weird this weekend. But
Tell
do
your
so-
enemies.
Do so responsibly. Bye.